There's a legend round here. A killer buried, but not dead. A curse on Crystal Lake. A death curse. Jason Voorhees' curse. They say he died as a boy, but he keeps coming back.
Jason is far more than just a mindless slasher. He is the result, a reflection of an ugly brutality given identity and form. In today's video, I will explain why Jason and the Friday the 13th series is a brilliant representation of causality, manifestation of the unquantifiable thread of choices. Let me start off by saying one word: the epicenter. The epicenter is the origin point of a seismic wave. It's a force that cannot be bound to the strict characterizations of negative or positive causality. The epicenter's radiating effect is a universal law written in unchangeable certainty. The makers of Friday the 13th understood this. You see, the epicenter of all the chaos, death, and carnage started with Jason Voorhees on September 13, 1957, when he drowned in Camp Crystal Lake at only 11 years old. But the issue of this disaster doesn't actually begin on that date. You see, it started way before that. The drowning is the end result, not the beginning of the buildup, rather than the drowning being the source of the destructive energy that followed. It is in actuality the surface result. In truth, it is the hypocenter that is the actual cause. It's the fault rupture energy being released that is the real starting point. But all of this happens deep underground and out of sight. So now that we know this, you may be asking, where in Friday the 13th is the hypocenter that created Jason later on? Well, it begins in the blind spot of plausible deniability, out of sight in delusional bliss. It starts with the total neglect of the system itself, from the judicial system to the management and staff. The counselors responsible for the children were not supervising them, as they were reportedly occupied with drinking, doing drugs, and having sex. This abandonment of duty directly led to the tragedy, but the tragic energy of this goes far more deeper and far more systemic. For example, it's a failed social safety net issue. A child with special needs and severe physical deformities was being tormented by his peers. The camp environment permitted this bullying to escalate unchecked to the point of violence. Things only get more sickening and depraved from here. As we all know, the camp counselors were not the owners of Camp Crystal Lake. The owners were the Christie family, which they established in 1935. They were the owners when 11-year-old Jason Voorhees drowned. It was the owners who were ultimately responsible for hiring the counselors, for vetting them. The buck stops with the owners for not establishing a foundation of safety, strictly regulated rules and guidelines. They were negligent in all these regards. We'll go over how they even became even more monstrous later on. You see, an epicenter doesn't just erupt with destructive aspects out of nowhere, because the energy has to fuel it, and the buildup of pressure has to come from somewhere. And the same thing applies to Jason. Jason didn't just pop up with violent force, I told you. He is ultimately the embodiment of the result. Let's continue the buildup to Jason's fault line rupture. The children who bullied Jason, parents bear indirect responsibility because their children failed to exhibit even basic empathy. And on top of that, their active role in pushing Jason into the lake directly led to his drowning. The children who bullied Jason for his deformities acted without supervision, pointing to a lack of guidance from their own parents. Before we go on, let's ask, why is Jason Voorhees the perfect character representation of visually exposing consequential truth? Well, it's quite simple. He represents the ultimate in innocence and the violation of that same innocence. You see, he wasn't just an 11-year-old young boy. He was vulnerability in flesh, he was mentally disabled, he was hydrocephalic, and he was even severely deformed. He was the ultimate version of defenselessness, even more than most children, because a child could eventually adapt, but he was trapped in a body that heavily relied on a system that was supposed to be protective instead of predatorial. He was a child that seemed to be born only to be sacrificially ripped apart, to expose the truth of the world he lives in, the survival of the fittest mentality. Let's go on. The fundamental truth is that energy can be redirected, transferred, or transformed by other forms of energy. This also applies in this scenario, choices that could have been made, choices that could have curtailed the birth of the result, which is Jason, because even after his supposed drowning, the sad truth was that the counselors responsible for watching Jason Voorhees when he drowned in 1957 were not held legally accountable by authorities. It was a pivotal moment to redirect incoming energy, a way to counter it, diffuse it with another form of energy, but as we know, what choice was made, and this served as a major plot point for the revenge of Pamela Voorhees and the birth of the result that followed, and all the consequences.
A curse on Crystal Lake. A death curse. Jason Voorhees' curse.
Jason, an innocent child turned into a monster due to neglect, abuse, and trauma rather than innate evil, Jason was now born. Born from countless consequential choices given energy and purpose, powered by the same system that refuses to admit its own culpability in feeding the same monster that it created. For example, despite all these tragedies and deaths, the Christie family refused to see their evil recklessness in all of this, so the camp was repeatedly reopened over and over again for the next 2 decades, continuing their indirect murders of countless people in the cycle of negligence, facilitating the dangers that spurred on the horror franchise. I told you Jason is more than just a slasher, he is the embodiment of thermodynamics. The laws of thermodynamics describe how energy is conserved and moves toward disorder, offering a powerful metaphor for the rippling effects of choices. Every choice acts as an energy input, creating irreversible consequences, entropy, and distributing influence across a system. He is that irreversible effect. The Pandora effect serves as a classic cautionary tale about the severe consequences of disobedience, curiosity, and impulsive, bad choices. By opening a forbidden jar, often mistranslated as a box, Pandora released plagues and suffering into the world, symbolizing how a single, unthinking action can lead to irreversible, widespread misfortune. Sounds strangely familiar, right? That's why Jason can't really be categorized as evil in the truest sense of the word. He is an outcome, a force that now has to complete its travel path to conclusion. He is the energy equation of every action, has an equal and opposite reaction of all the bad choices, from the parents, the children, the breakdown of the justice system, the counselors, the owners, and even the town that refuses to close the camp. It's all focused now to a single point, and that is Jason. There is a reason why he's called a force of nature now, because he's a flashpoint, the fault line that has ruptured, and now he is the result. Jason is a natural effect, a way the body tries to heal itself with a scab that is ugly to try to protect itself. All the deaths and consequences are mostly from those who didn't heed the warnings. In the end, Jason is more than a slasher. More than just some random act of violence, he is a biological force of nature that was tempered in the fires of toxic consequences. When Jason Voorhees was that 11-year-old disabled child, he did not have the mental capacity to choose to become a monster, but he was forced into one created through malicious neglect and callous disregard of life. Jason is the mutation of that fact and is ultimately the biggest result.
That's my boy. Hunt them down and make them pay.